Rich, thanks for joining us. How are you doing today?
Very well, thanks, mate. How are you?
Yeah, very good, very good. We were just saying there
Excellent.
how quick the year has been so far. We're mid-Feb already,
Absolutely.
so it's flying by. So I appreciate your time as always, Rich. So for those that don't know who you are, if you want to give a quick introduction, who you are and where you're currently working.
Absolutely. So my name's Richard Handyside. I'm course lead for sports coaching and physical education at Birmingham City University, as well as lecturing in performance analysis on our sport and exercise science degree.
Nice, thank you. So I think it's important to note as well, Rich, because you are an ex-analyst as well, which I think is really important. So a lot of the people, a lot of lecturers aren't there, kind of have specialities in different things, and you actually come from and analysis background. You actually did that high level. So I just want to kind of ask you about that first off, because you were Arsenal analyst at
Yeah, I
Arsenal.
was. Yeah. So a number of years ago,
Yeah.
did a master's in performance analysis and went into working football. So I spent a year working for Leeds United Football Club
Hmm.
before moving down to London and having 5 years down at Arsenal Football Club, primarily in the academy, and then latterly a little bit more with the first team. Following that at Arsenal, I actually went and had a couple of years with the English Institute of Sport, working as a performance analyst with a number of different sports over there, including the 2018 Commonwealth Games, which was a huge career highlight. And then, so yeah, post that into academia, into my current role now at Birmingham City University and lecturing in performance analysis
Nice.
majority of my time.
Yeah, nice. So that kind of leads me on to because I like to kind of get a picture of how the sector, in terms of the academic side of things, but how it's changed and how it's grown in analysis. So I don't know. I'm probably about similar ages here, which I don't know. So obviously, I went to uni to do analysis as well, and I worked in clubs, and obviously, this is kind of going back over 10 years. So from your time back then, how do you feel it's changed from then to now in terms of the popularity of it? Are more students interested in it? Is there more of a career pathway, would you say, just in
Yeah,
the differences?
absolutely. And I think I'm in a really nice position to be able to see and comment on that. I think, I remember back, so I started my undergrad in 2005 and I did a sport and exercise science degree. We didn't have a performance analysis module. It wasn't something that we ever covered on a full 3 year sport and exercise BSc, which would just be unheard of now on any sports science degree. And so for me, it was very much a kind of exploration and discovering this field of performance analysis that we all love. And very much kind of having to do it off my own back, I think. Whereas now, as you say, absolutely, you won't find a BSc in sport and exercise science anywhere in the country, I suspect, that won't have at least a module in performance analysis that's reflected in what the HE sector is doing, and then the response to it as well. So for example, at BCU, we've recently gone through a revalidation process where we've kind of looked in detail at our degree and the modules that we deliver and the way we deliver it. And one of the things that cropped up very early was, let's go even more. Let's take the performance analysis that we do and grow it. We're putting a brand new, very, very bespoke level 6 performance analysis of elite sport module into our provision. Because what we're seeing is a number of our graduates are starting to inquire about careers in analysis, about how to get into working in professional sport from a performance analysis perspective, be that straight into a career or master's study or whatever might come next. So yeah, without a doubt, the growth over the last 10 years, certainly with regard to the standing of performance analysis within higher education, has just absolutely exploded, much to the pleasure of people like us who clearly are involved.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So just for the record, the date you gave, you're a bit older than me, Rich, there with that date. So,
Damn.
um, but what you said is very similar. So my course, I had a module. I think you had to choose. It wasn't there for everyone to do. You had to choose it in the second year,
Yeah.
and there wasn't that many people that did it, to be honest, back then. But as you say, it's become much more popular now. So that's in terms of at BCU. Then is it a module that people select? Is it part? Is it actually in the course for everyone, or is
Yeah,
it?
so we have two, and that again that reflects exactly what we're talking about. So we have a mandatory core module at level 5. It's actually a very large double credit both semester performance analysis module, and that being double credit, being both semesters, gives us the capacity to expand it beyond perhaps what we might understand as analysts or people experiencing working it in the field. Within that module, we've got things like GPS, which traditionally you might see would fall perhaps with S&C or kind of the blurred line between analysis and strength and conditioning. That falls within this performance analysis module, as well as elements of athlete profiling and fitness testing and things. That all kind of falls under the banner of analysis. and that is, as I say, a mandatory second year module. What we've then added is an optional level 6 module called Performance Analysis of Elite Sport, which is specifically focused on predominantly notational analysis, and really for those students who think that a career analysis, or at least to explore the potential for a career analysis, is something that they think that they might want to do.
Yeah. Nice. I think I would imagine as well, like a lot of students might, because again, just going back to my time when I was learning analysis from my lecturers, and no kind of disrespect to the lecturers I had, but they'd not worked in a club,
No.
do you know what I mean? And,
Yeah.
and I, having, if I had someone like you as my lecturer and I could actually ask you questions about what goes on day to day, how it was for you physically working in a club, I think that's really useful. So I think your students have got, definitely that's a positive for them to have you as one of their lecturers. So let's go. So in terms of what the students do as part of the modules then, Rich, can you kind of expand on that a little bit more? Do you have them filming? Are they given footage that they code? And how does it look from maybe a project perspective for them?
Yeah. So in that first level 5 module, for a lot of the students, it's the first time that they've ever come across any form of performance analysis at all. So we take it right back to the very beginning, introduce the overarching topics of athlete monitoring, again, be that GPS, fitness testing, or elements of notational analysis. And the first thing that we get them to do as part of an initial assessment is a needs analysis. So very much from an analytical standpoint, can you enter, and they get the choice of any sport that they want. Can you enter a sporting environment and conduct some form of needs analysis where we begin to understand what limits performance within those sports? And over the years, we've had, the majority of our students will pick those big invasion games: football, rugby, hockey, netball. But over the years, we've had students pick all sorts of, weird and wonderful sports, from, fencing to skiing to MMA. And apply the principles of performance analysis to that, to get that initial underpinning understanding of the analytical process and how to observe sport in a very different way. Because we would have been the same when we were students. Our sport and exercise science, and indeed our coaching and physical education students, watch sport all the time. They engage with sport, they play sport, they might coach sport at the weekends or play to whatever level it is, and they're used to conversing about sport naturally, of course. And so the first thing over the first few weeks of this module that we try to do is to kind of make them aware of the conversations that they're having, and say, well, actually, how can we potentially turn these, opinion conversations, bias conversations, tradition, the things that we do in sport all the time, and turn them into a slightly more analytical conversation where we're saying, the example I always use in lectures is the perennial Messi versus Ronaldo debate. Absolutely don't mind which side of the fence you sit on, provided you back that up with some form of proper analysis of the situation, and then I can get on board either way. And so in those early weeks, it's very much kind of trying to rewire our brains about how we watch sport, how we think about sport, and bringing that data or that statistical element of sport into conversations. Once we are happy that we've done that, and we've gone through that initial process, again, because it's a double credit module, at least in the first instance, it gives us the capacity, we have space, we have time to really develop it. Once we get past Christmas and into the second half of the module, they then have, they're building towards an assessment where they have to create effectively an athlete report. So we provide those students with footage. Again, one of the big things about our university is we want to provide the students with choice. So we give them a choice of a range of different sports, whereby they are able to access things like data from a GPS from training sessions. They get fitness testing data, they get match footage, and their task is to produce effectively a report on an individual athlete, their strengths and weaknesses, where elements of where they can improve, and again, using the principles of performance analysis that they've learned, to kind of align with, again, the prescription for what might be changing a training protocol or a technical tactical issue. And what we find is, over the course of that 9 months, it's a long time. The change that we see in the students and their ability to put together things like reports, or to analyze individuals or teams is where they start to where they get to is always fantastic to see, because they come a very long way in a relatively short space of time.
Yeah, nice. So let's kind of get into the actual usage of in-play online then, if we can, Rich. I just want to say as well, like, when you guys kind of took on the subscription with that, that kind of, it was also, being an analyst myself, as I mentioned, I've had a lot to do with the design of the product and how it kind of works. So to hear from another analyst that obviously this is a tool that you decided to choose, having used many different things, and that you felt it right for your students. So that was a positive for us to hear as well, because it means that we're obviously doing something right. So I'm just kind of curious to see how specifically the students use it. So in terms of what tools they're using, tagging, playlists, etc. And then also just to ask you again, like kind of why you chose in-play in the first place, and any benefits that you would like to share.
Yeah, so I'll start then with how we use it. So it's used across a number of modules. So we use it within our coaching and physical education degree. They have modules relating to very specific. The coaching process, for example, is the name of one of the modules. They also have a performance analysis module. So our coaching students use it absolutely. And our sport and exercise science students, which I've been predominantly talking about so far, will obviously use it very heavily. And what we're seeing as well, on top of that, in the last probably 2 or 3 years, is a much greater increase of students choosing performance analysis modules, or rather choosing performance analysis as a subject area for their final year dissertation.
Yeah.
So, in-play underpins all of that. We use in-play as our primary, as our sole coding software across. So that's 2 different degrees, 5 or 6 different modules within those degree programs, and it is heavily used throughout. When we were initially, or when I was initially looking for a solution to selecting a coding software, or finding a company to align with that would help us do what it is that we want to do, the primary criteria for me was simplicity. So as I mentioned there, a lot of our students have never been involved in performance analysis in any capacity at all, not least the principles of notational analysis or coding. You mentioned the word coding in a lecture, and you see these kids panic, and they have no concept of it at all. So for me, the first thing was that we were looking for something that was simplistic. Now, what I've found over the years of using in-play is that actually that's probably not a fair assessment of the tool at all. Yes, it is simple to use, and that is a huge plus, but it isn't in any way basic. And I think sometimes those 2 words go hand in hand, and they mean different things. It is simple. It is fantastic for the students to be able to log in with their own login details, whether they're on campus or elsewhere, and begin coding almost immediately. But as I say, that isn't to say that it's a basic tool, because over the years of using it, the amount of features, the array of different elements within that software, from the initial creating of the code window to coding a game, to using the playlist, to using the drawing tools, to annotating, to adding voice notes to clips, to sharing playlists with me as the lecturer, or other members of a group work that they might be doing, people being able to collaborate on a single timeline. These tools are not basic tools in the slightest. And so, whilst initially it might have been that in-play stood out as a simple tool for us to get on board with in the first instance, very quickly we realized the capabilities of it, and actually it is able to work right at that starting point for our students for the first time that they're seeing any form of analysis software, right up to those performing a dissertation in performance analysis with a potential career ambition to go on and become analysts. They're not finding that it has limitations.
Nice. Yeah, I think, and as well, you mentioned like kind of you've been using in-play for a number of years, and I think we have grown a lot together in that as well, because that is something that we are quite big on in terms of speaking with our users, people like yourself, especially coming from an analyst background, to kind of help mold the product to make it even better over the time as well.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think, I would echo that, the conversations we've had over the years, the way in which yourself and the company listen to the users to implement, be it ideas or feedback, and see that reflected in the product. You mentioned they're working as an analyst. I did work as an analyst for many years. I think it's safe to say the majority of us that have worked in a sport like football probably have experience with something like sports code. As a result, have frustrations with a company like sports code, whether that's financial frustrations or usability frustrations or compatibility issues. There are things that all tools have difficulties with, and what we've found from an educational point of view is that we're yet to really run into a problem that we can't solve with in-play, because of that ease of usability, the fact that it's students have their own login, they can access it remotely, they don't have to be here on campus on a machine that has that software installed. It's browser based, and so from an academic point of view, it serves every purpose we could need it to.
Yeah, perfect. No, I appreciate that. That was nice. I think one thing I will kind of say just to wrap this up, Rich, I want to kind of ask you for some advice because I do like to ask all the lecturers I spoke to recently in terms of advice for students. So whether it's to become an analyst or just in general to kind of get a career in sport after they finish university. So you kind of did that yourself. So what would you say in terms of advice that you could pass on to students?
Yeah, I think potentially quite cliched. You'll have heard this before, but it's about opportunities. You know,
Mm,
when you're on an undergraduate degree, you are there for a 3 year or 4 year degree program, and you potentially could go through that program and at the end of it graduate with your piece of paper that says, you know, I am a sport and exercise science graduate, or I am a sports coaching and physical education graduate, with all due respect, not much else attached.
yeah,
It's you know, you get your degree and you go. My advice to students, certainly those looking for careers in performance analysis, is the majority of universities, BCU absolutely, will offer a whole range of opportunities throughout your degree. So here at BCU, for example, we have Aston Villa, West Brom, Solihull Moors football clubs will come in to do things like testing days or use some of the facilities that we've got here. It might not be necessarily performance analysis specific, but when those opportunities arise, you know, volunteer your time, go and get involved in those opportunities, build your CV, build your network, you know, have that LinkedIn account where you're, you know, every time you work with somebody new, you add them and you build your network so that when you graduate, the person sat next to you might graduate with their, you know, piece of paper and their degree certificate. What you've got is exactly the same, plus a CV as long as your arm already with all of the places you've worked, things that you've done. And as I say, I know that academic staff and university staff stress that point to death, and I don't know that it's always heeded. But for me, I did that as an undergraduate. I got some good advice. I followed that advice, and it absolutely helped, because the first time you go to the next thing, whether it's an application for a master's degree or an application for your first job, you know, your CV's already at the top of the pile because of what you've already done, and you've taken those opportunities at a younger age than somebody who graduates and then goes, right, now what?
yeah,
So for sure, you know, that's the beauty of being involved in higher education. Those opportunities are there. Seek them out, engage with them, and ensure that by the time you graduate, your CV is already well established.
yeah. Great answer. You say it's cliche, but it's because it's true. Like that's the
Absolutely.
fact. You've got to be proactive. You've got to kind of go out and do the extra bits and pieces
Yeah,
and put yourself out there. So that's brilliant, Rich. Thanks very much for your time. Really appreciate that. I'm sure we'll catch up soon, but until then, you take care.
absolutely. Thanks ever so much, mate.